You are nothing but a filthy street thug playing dress-up in a hard hat." The screeching voice of the woman in the designer white dress pierced the absolute silence of the multi-million-dollar suburban morning. "Get your trash out of my neighborhood right now before I have you locked up exactly where your kind belongs." She violently slammed the heavy door of her pristine black Mercedes G-Class. She had intentionally parked the massive luxury SUV diagonally across the narrow driveway. She was completely trapping the contractor's work truck inside the property line. Let us pause this ugly display of entitlement for just a second. Looking at this chaotic scene, you probably think you know exactly what is going on here. You might assume this is just another unfortunate misunderstanding over a parking spot in a crowded suburb. But the truth running beneath the surface of this confrontation is far more twisted and deeply rooted in sheer, unapologetic arrogance. To understand why this wealthy woman felt so comfortable unleashing such venom, we have to rewind the clock. We need to look at the man she is screaming at. His name is Marcus. Marcus did not inherit a trust fund or a sprawling real estate empire. He built his landscaping and contracting business with nothing but calloused hands and an unbreakable will. I want you to picture a man who spent the last 10 years waking up at 4 in the morning every single day. He poured concrete in the blistering summer heat until his muscles screamed for mercy. He laid heavy stone bricks in the freezing rain until his fingers bled and went numb. He skipped holidays, birthdays, and relaxing weekends just to secure a better future for his wife and his 2 young daughters. Every single bead of sweat that dropped from his forehead was a stepping stone toward his ultimate goal of true financial freedom. He represents the pure, unfiltered definition of grinding from the absolute bottom to the very top against all possible odds. If you are someone who wakes up every day fighting to build a legacy for your family, I want you to drop the words Black Excellence in the comments right now. Let us show the algorithm that we celebrate hard work, integrity, and resilience. And make sure you hit that subscribe button to witness exactly how this incredible journey of justice unfolds. Now, let us bring the timeline back to this very morning. Marcus had just landed the biggest, most lucrative contract of his entire career. He was hired by a progressive young tech billionaire to build a massive, state-of-the-art hydroponic garden and luxury patio for a newly sold estate. This was not just any neighborhood. This was an exclusive, gated community where the houses looked like castles and the driveways were paved with imported cobblestone. He arrived at the worksite precisely at 7 in the morning. He made absolutely sure to park his heavy-duty work truck neatly and securely within the designated property lines. He placed all of his expensive, city-approved permits clearly on the dashboard for anyone to see. The morning air was crisp, cool, and incredibly peaceful. The only sound echoing through the neighborhood was the gentle hum of his equipment as he carefully measured the heavy wooden beams. Marcus was holding a specialized laser level, an expensive piece of equipment he had saved up for months to purchase. He was wearing heavy steel-toed boots that bore the scuffs and scars of 100 successful projects. His hands were rough, but his mind was sharper than any corporate executive sitting in a corner office. He had spent countless nights studying advanced landscape architecture, mastering the complex systems of sustainable irrigation. He was not just a laborer, he was a visionary builder who understood the intricate science of soil and water. He was completely in his zone, visualizing the beautiful, sustainable oasis he was about to create with his own 2 hands. He was not blocking the main road. He was not playing loud, disruptive music. He was simply a professional executing his craft to absolute perfection. But in a neighborhood where the unwritten price of admission is a massive 7-figure bank account, things are different. The sight of a highly skilled, hardworking black entrepreneur in a high-visibility vest was apparently too much for some of the elite residents to handle. Enter Victoria. Victoria was the self-appointed, tyrannical queen of the local homeowners association. She lived 3 massive houses down the street, but she made it her personal, daily mission to aggressively police every single inch of the neighborhood. She hated the sight of commercial work trucks with a burning passion. She despised the very idea that someone outside her elite tax bracket was breathing the same manicured, purified air as her. Victoria had never worked a day of physical labor in her entire privileged life. Her immense wealth was handed to her on a silver platter, inherited from a family fortune she did absolutely nothing to build. She wore a perfectly tailored white silk dress that probably cost more than the massive engine inside Marcus's truck. Her wrists were weighed down by heavy gold bracelets that clinked loudly with every angry, entitled gesture she made. She viewed the surrounding world through a deeply distorted, highly toxic lens of racial and class superiority. In her incredibly twisted mind, a man who wore a neon safety vest and carried a tool belt was inherently beneath her. She felt an uncontrollable, sickening urge to establish dominance, to rudely remind this working-class entrepreneur of his supposed place in the social hierarchy. She had been watching Marcus from her massive bay window all morning. She was sipping her expensive imported espresso while letting her irrational, baseless anger boil over into pure, unadulterated rage. She paced back and forth across her imported hardwood floors, muttering toxic insults under her breath about property values and neighborhood aesthetics. Finally, her blinding entitlement took complete control over her rational mind. She could not take it anymore. She aggressively grabbed her designer keys, marched out to her pristine driveway, and fired up her massive Mercedes G-Class. She did not just drive over to have a polite conversation or ask him a simple, neighborly question. She fully weaponized her heavy luxury vehicle. With a reckless, deafening screech of her expensive tires, she swerved directly into the private driveway of Marcus's wealthy client. She slammed heavily on the brakes just mere inches away from his heavy steel bumper. The sudden, violent noise completely shattered the peaceful, quiet atmosphere of the crisp morning. Marcus immediately lowered his heavy power drill and turned around. He was completely confused by the aggressive, dangerous maneuver that had just taken place on private property. He wiped the heavy sweat from his forehead with the back of his calloused hand and took a calm, measured step forward. He genuinely assumed she had just made a careless wrong turn. Perhaps she was a confused neighbor who simply needed him to move a few inches to accommodate a large furniture delivery. He offered her a polite, warm, and highly professional smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you with something today?" That simple, incredibly respectful question was all it took to completely ignite her fragile, deeply rooted fury. She aggressively rolled down her dark-tinted window and unleashed a vicious barrage of unhinged insults that made the crisp morning air turn instantly toxic. "Do you have any idea who I am, or are you just completely illiterate?" Victoria shrieked at the top of her lungs, stepping dangerously close to Marcus. Her voice was so incredibly piercing that it actually echoed off the massive stone facades of the surrounding luxury mansions. "You people think you can just drive your filthy, oil-leaking trash cans into our pristine neighborhoods and do whatever you want." Let us pause and really pay attention to the specific words she just weaponized. "You people." It was the classic, undeniable dog whistle of someone who feels genetically and socially superior simply because of their zip code and their bank account. She was not just complaining about a truck. She was attempting to entirely strip away his dignity, his hard work, and his right to simply exist in her presence. She aggressively pointed her perfectly manicured finger right at his chest, her face turning a blotchy, angry shade of red. "I am the president of this homeowners association, and I am personally ordering you to pack up your little toys and get out of my sight before I ruin your pathetic life." Now, imagine standing in Marcus's heavy steel-toed boots right at this exact, volatile moment. Any normal human being would have completely lost their temper. Any average person would have yelled back, matched her toxic energy, and given her exactly the chaotic reaction she was so desperately trying to provoke. But Marcus is not average. He operates on an entirely different level of emotional intelligence and professional discipline. He took a slow, deep breath, letting the cool morning air fill his lungs. He thought about his two little girls sitting at the breakfast table back home, watching their father leave for work with immense pride. He knew that getting angry would only feed her twisted, racist narrative. So, instead of raising his voice, he reached calmly into the cabin of his work truck. He did not grab a tool. He did not grab his phone to record her just yet. He pulled out a heavy, transparent plastic folder containing his crisp, officially stamped city permits. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I am a fully licensed general contractor hired by the legal owner of this property." Marcus spoke with a deep, steady baritone voice that radiated absolute control and undeniable authority. "These are the municipal permits approved by the city council, and I am parked entirely within the legal boundaries of a private driveway." He politely held the documents forward so she could clearly see the golden municipal seal reflecting in the morning sun. "However, I must inform you that you are currently committing a severe traffic violation by intentionally blocking a private right-of-way." He gestured calmly toward her massive Mercedes G-Class, which was completely blocking the only exit to the main road. I highly suggest you move your vehicle now before this situation escalates unnecessarily." That calm, educated, and legally accurate response was the absolute worst thing he could have possibly said to a woman like Victoria. She did not want a logical debate. She wanted a submissive, fearful apology from a man she considered to be nothing more than the hired help. The fact that this black entrepreneur was standing his ground, speaking to her as a complete equal, and actually educating her on municipal law completely shattered her fragile ego. "Oh, you want to talk about the law?" She let out a wicked, sarcastic laugh that sent a cold shiver down the spine of the neighborhood. "Let us see how much the law protects a threatening thug like you." With a swift, arrogant motion, she pulled a heavy designer key fob from her expensive leather purse. She pressed the lock button twice. The heavy doors of the Mercedes locked with a loud, metallic clank, and the side mirrors automatically folded inward. She crossed her arms tightly across her chest, a sinister, victorious smirk spreading across her heavily powdered face. "My car is not moving a single inch, sweetheart. If you want to leave, you are going to have to physically move it yourself." It was the ultimate, arrogant power play. She was literally holding his entire workday, his livelihood, and his heavy equipment completely hostage on a whim. But she was not done yet. Victoria reached back into her bag and pulled out the ultimate weapon of the entitled suburban tyrant, her smartphone. She did not hesitate for a single second. She aggressively punched in 3 specific numbers that have historically been used to terrorize innocent black men for decades. 911. What happened next was a display of psychological manipulation so deeply disturbing that it belongs in a psychology textbook. The very second the emergency dispatcher answered the call, Victoria's entire demeanor instantly transformed. The aggressive, screaming, tyrannical woman completely vanished. In a fraction of a second, she miraculously turned into a terrified, weeping, fragile victim. "Hello? Please. You have to send officers immediately." Her voice was suddenly shaking uncontrollably, tears miraculously welling up in her eyes as she practically whispered into the phone. "I am standing outside my own home, and there is a very large, aggressive black man in a construction vest threatening me." She backed away slightly, putting on the performance of a lifetime for the dispatcher on the other end of the line. "He is trapping me here. He is refusing to leave the neighborhood, and I genuinely fear for my physical safety. Please hurry. He looks like he is going to attack me." Let that absolutely horrifying lie sink in for a moment. She was the one who blocked his truck. She was the one who trespassed. She was the one who started screaming and throwing vicious insults. Yet, she was fully prepared to use the armed power of the police force to potentially ruin or end this innocent man's life, all because her fragile ego was bruised. This is the terrifying reality that hardworking people like Marcus have to face every single day. I need to stop right here and ask you a very serious question. What would you do if you were standing there, working hard to feed your family, and someone maliciously weaponized the police against you with a blatant, dangerous lie? Would you panic? Would you run? If you stand with Marcus and believe in the unbreakable power of staying perfectly calm under the most terrifying pressure, I need you to flood the comments right now. Type the words "Black Excellence" to send strength to this incredible man as he waits for the flashing red and blue lights to arrive. Your support in the comments is what keeps these vital stories of justice alive. Marcus did not flinch. He did not beg her to hang up the phone. He simply took a step back, leaned against the heavy steel bumper of his work truck, and offered her a small, knowing smile. He knew something that she did not. He knew that the truth always leaves a footprint, and arrogant people always dig their own financial graves. The distant, piercing wail of police sirens began to echo through the immaculate streets of the gated community. Within minutes, 2 heavy police cruisers aggressively turned the corner, their blinding red and blue lights reflecting off the perfectly manicured lawns. Victoria immediately wiped her dry eyes, forcing a dramatic, terrified expression onto her heavily powdered face. She practically sprinted toward the approaching officers, her expensive white silk dress fluttering in the morning breeze. "Officers, thank God you are here. This man has been terrorizing me and holding me hostage in my own neighborhood." She frantically pointed her manicured finger at Marcus, who was still casually leaning against his massive work truck. "He is completely unhinged. He threatened to attack me, and I demand that you arrest him and remove his garbage truck immediately." The 2 veteran officers stepped out of their vehicles, their hands resting cautiously on their duty belts. They had responded to thousands of emergency calls, and they knew exactly how to read a tense situation. They looked at Victoria, who was hyperventilating and putting on an Oscar-worthy performance of absolute suburban terror. Then they looked over at Marcus. Marcus was not screaming, he was not defensive, and he was absolutely not acting like a dangerous criminal. He was the living embodiment of a positive, wealthy mindset, someone who understood that true power comes from supreme emotional control. He stood tall, radiating the charisma and quiet confidence of a man who builds his own destiny with his bare hands. He calmly reached into his heavy work vest and pulled out his official city permits, along with his state-issued identification. "Good morning, officers. My name is Marcus, and I am the lead contractor hired to build a massive sustainable aquaponics system on this private estate." He handed the heavy stack of legally stamped documents to the lead officer with a polite, respectful nod. "I am highly passionate about building organic vegetable gardens and raising fish for my clients, and I am fully authorized to be working right here. I have been completely silent, simply trying to do my job so I can achieve financial freedom for my beautiful family." This woman intentionally swerved her luxury vehicle across the private driveway, completely blocking my only exit. Then she aggressively locked her doors, verbally assaulted me with extreme racial slurs, and falsely called the emergency hotline. Victoria gasped loudly, placing her hand over her expensive pearl necklace in an exaggerated display of fake shock. "That is an absolute, disgusting lie. He is a violent thug, and he is trying to manipulate you." The older officer held up his hand, signaling for her to immediately stop screaming. He carefully reviewed the heavy municipal documents, his eyes scanning the Golden City seals and the specific property boundaries. "Everything here is perfectly legal, ma'am. This gentleman has every right to be operating his equipment on this specific property." Victoria's jaw dropped open, her fragile ego completely shattering right there on the pristine imported cobblestone. "You are supposed to protect the elite residents of this community, not these filthy, uneducated laborers." The younger officer walked slowly around her massive, illegally parked Mercedes G-Class, pulling a small notepad from his uniform pocket. He quietly read her expensive vanity license plate into his heavy shoulder radio, waiting for the central dispatch to run a complete background check. Marcus just smiled a very calm, knowing smile, absolutely unafraid of failure because he knew he had done nothing wrong. He casually pointed his calloused finger up toward the heavy roof of his client's massive modern mansion. "By the way, officers, my client has 4 high-definition, unblinking security cameras pointing directly at this driveway. They record both crystal-clear video and highly sensitive audio, capturing every single second of this interaction." Victoria's face instantly drained of all its color, turning a sickly, terrifying shade of pale white. She knew exactly what those expensive cameras had just recorded. She knew they had captured her intentionally blocking his truck, screaming racial slurs, and completely fabricating a dangerous emergency. Suddenly, the heavy police radio violently cracked to life with a loud burst of static. The dispatcher's voice echoed loudly across the quiet suburban street, delivering a completely devastating blow to Victoria's arrogance. "The vehicle is currently unregistered, and the registered owner has exactly 23 outstanding municipal traffic warrants. She currently owes the city over $15,000 in unpaid fines, and her driving privileges were legally suspended 6 months ago." The absolute silence that followed that radio transmission was the sweetest, most satisfying sound Marcus had ever heard. Victoria started stumbling backward, her heavy gold bracelets shaking violently as absolute panic took over her entire body. "There must be some kind of ridiculous mistake. I am the president of the Homeowners Association. I do not get parking tickets." The older officer pulled a heavy book of citations from his belt, his expression turning incredibly stern and unforgiving. "Ma'am, you are currently operating a massive motor vehicle on a suspended license, which is a severe criminal offense. Furthermore, you have intentionally blocked a designated emergency access route, and you have maliciously misused the emergency dispatcher system to file a false police report." Before Victoria could even scream out another toxic excuse, the heavy, blinding yellow lights of a massive city tow truck appeared around the corner. The officers had quietly summoned the impound unit the very second they saw her illegally parked vehicle blocking the right-of-way. "No, you cannot touch my car. Do you have any idea how much that custom paint job costs?" She lunged forward, trying to aggressively push the young officer away from the door of her expensive luxury vehicle. That was the absolute final, devastating mistake of her privileged, arrogant life. In one swift, highly trained motion, the officer grabbed her wrists, spun her around, and forcefully pushed her against the heavy steel hood of her own car. The cold, heavy, metallic click of police handcuffs echoed loudly through the wealthy neighborhood. Victoria completely broke down, crying hysterical, genuine tears of absolute defeat as the cold steel bit into her wrists. Her wealthy neighbors started stepping out onto their massive porches, holding their morning coffees, watching the tyrannical queen of the neighborhood get arrested in broad daylight. She was violently shoved into the cramped, hard plastic backseat of the police cruiser, her expensive white silk dress completely ruined. The massive tow truck aggressively hooked onto the front axle of her pristine Mercedes, lifting it high into the air without a single ounce of care. Marcus stood there, watching the massive luxury vehicle get dragged away down the street, feeling a massive wave of pure, unfiltered justice wash over him. He did not gloat, he did not cheer, he just simply turned around, picked up his heavy laser level, and went right back to building his beautiful garden. He proved that true strength does not come from screaming or inherited wealth. It comes from absolute resilience, hard work, and letting karma do its brutal job. Now, I want to completely break the fourth wall and ask you a very serious, deeply uncomfortable moral question. If you were walking your dog down that street and you saw this wealthy, entitled woman intentionally weaponizing the police against an innocent, hardworking black entrepreneur, what would you honestly do? Would you actively step in, pull out your phone, and risk becoming the target of her toxic rage to defend a complete stranger? Or would you silently lower your head, pretend you did not see anything, and walk away because it is simply not your problem? The law absolutely does not protect hatred, arrogance, or malicious intent. If you believe in standing up for what is right, if you believe in the unbreakable spirit of the working class, I need you to type Black Excellence in the comments right now. Prove that you are not one of the silent bystanders. Do not forget to absolutely smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another explosive story of brutal, satisfying justice.